The top 10 most shocking cases of corporate fraud. Okay, look, we know corporate fraud is a white-collar crime that can have devastating consequences for businesses, investors, and employees. And the financial losses resulting from fraud can run into the billions of dollars, while the reputational damage can even be more significant. So, in this video, we're going to take a closer look at the top 10 most shocking cases of corporate fraud in recent history, revealing the schemes, tactics, and individuals behind these massive crimes. Let's start with Enron. Enron was once one of the largest energy companies in the world. It collapsed in 2001 due to a massive accounting fraud. You see, the company's executives had created shell companies and used off-balance sheet transactions to inflate Enron's earnings, leading to the loss of billions of dollars for shareholders and employees, and resulting in senior executives being sent to federal prison. Number 2, Worldcom. Now, Worldcom was a telecommunications company that engaged in accounting fraud between 1999 and 2002, overstating its earnings by nearly $11 billion. The fraud was uncovered by a whistleblower and led to the company's bankruptcy and the conviction of the CEO of Bernie Madoff. Speaking of Bernie's, number 3, Bernie Madoff ran a massive Ponzi scheme for over 2 decades, defrauding investors of over $50 billion. He was eventually caught and sentenced to 150 years in prison. And by the way, his Ponzi scheme was so elaborate that he actually passed 3 SEC audits before eventually it collapsing in 2008 because the financial crisis meant it was running out of funds. Now, HealthSouth was a healthcare services company that engaged in accounting fraud from 1996 to 2002 by inflating earnings by nearly $3 billion. Now, Aaron Beam was at the time the CFO of the company, and he said the CEO, Richard Scrushy, who eventually was convicted of fraud, was really the guy that orchestrated the program. However, 5 CFOs ended up falling to this accounting fraud by HealthSouth. Another one, the name might ring a bell, is Tyco International, which at the time was a diversified manufacturing and services company. And it too engaged in accounting fraud from 1996 to 2002, and the CEO, Dennis Kozlowski, and CFO, Mark Schwartz, used corporate funds to finance a lavish lifestyle, leading to the loss of billions of dollars for shareholders. By the way, the lavish lifestyle is one of those keys to understanding maybe something is not exactly right. Satyam Computer Services was an Indian IT company, and they engaged in accounting fraud from 2003 to 2008. They inflated earnings by over $1 billion, and the company's founder eventually admitted to the fraud and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. What about Olympus Corporation? That's a Japanese camera and medical equipment manufacturer. They engaged in accounting fraud from the 1990s to 2011. Now, that was a long time, hiding losses of over $1 billion. The scheme? Well, it was uncovered by a whistleblower and led to the resignation of the company's CEO. By the way, that's another theme here. In many cases, it is someone on the inside that is the whistleblower that leads to its ultimate collapse, just like Enron. Now, Lehman Brothers was a global financial services firm, and they engaged in accounting fraud from 2001 to 2008 using off-balance sheet transactions to hide losses. Eventually, the company went bankrupt in 2008 as the Great Recession really kicked into gear, and that was one of the contributors to the global financial crisis. Parmalat, an Italian dairy and food company, engaged in accounting fraud from 1990 to 2003. Man, that's a long time. They inflated earnings by nearly $5 billion. And the CEO of that company was eventually sentenced to 18 years in prison. And number 10, Adelphia Company. It's a cable television company, and they engaged in accounting fraud from 1999 to 2002. Again, inflating earnings by nearly $3 billion. The company's founder, John Rigas, and his son Timothy were eventually convicted of fraud. Now, let's think about this for just a second. These 10 cases of corporate fraud serve as a reminder of the importance of strong corporate governance, effective internal controls, and ethical leadership. Now, fraudsters may think they can get away with their schemes, but history has shown that the truth always comes out in the end. By learning from these cases, businesses can take steps to prevent fraud and protect themselves from the devastating consequences of financial crime.